A silent ripple ran through the void of space as the gargantuan vessels appeared on the sensors of the human outpost. They were unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Smooth black hulls stretched for miles, adorned with patterns that glowed, faintly, like wounds stitched by living light. The crew watched in stunned awe as the ships slowed and lowered themselves into orbit above the desert world. This was the day the so-called gods would descend, and everyone held their breath. Below, the planet's dusty plains lay undisturbed, save for the small cluster of domed habitats and antenna towers. Birds had fled long ago, and only the wind dared to roam freely. Soldiers in light armor gathered at the edge of the central plaza, rifles slung over their shoulders. Scientists hurried to secure fragile instruments. Civilians peeked from behind reinforced doors. They all shared one thought. If these new arrivals really were gods, then they needed no invitation. A sudden pulse of light swept down from the largest ship like a gentle brush across the ground. The air trembled, and the scattered rocks in the plaza skittered into dust. Phones and radios died, their screens fading to black in unison. The soldiers raised their weapons, but no commands came from their superiors. It was as though the gods themselves had silenced the world, demanding a moment of attention. Then, from that beam of light, the beings emerged. They were tall and slender, with limbs that curved in elegant arcs. Their skin shimmered with a pale gold sheen, and they did not speak. Instead, they lifted their arms in unison, as if welcoming the entire planet to their presence. The humans stared, wide-eyed, recognizing the weight of the moment. History was being written, and they were the first witnesses. A human commander, Colonel Reyes, stepped forward. He was older, with streaks of gray in his black hair and lines etched deep into his face from years of war. He held a simple flag, the symbol of Earth emblazoned across its field. In his other hand was a small device, a universal translator designed for first contact. He raised both the flag and the device, then spoke. "We welcome you to our world. We come in peace." His voice trembled only slightly. The gods tilted their heads. One moved forward, its long fingers brushing the air as if tasting sound. Then it lowered its hand and traced a symbol on the ground. The translator crackled to life, the machine's lights flickering. In a voice like wind chimes, it spoke. Peace. The words spread through the plaza, carrying a resonance that felt heavy and final. For a moment, the silence returned, deeper than before. Colonel Reyes swallowed hard. He gestured toward the horizon, hoping to show hospitality. "We offer food, water, shelter," he said. "Tell us what you need." The golden being paused, then lifted its hand and pointed to the sky. Other ships hovered overhead, casting long shadows across the tents and workshops. The message was clear. These gods came not for a polite visit, but to stake their claim. Panic flickered at the edges of the human mind. Scientists hurried to transmission consoles, broadcasting pleas to Earth for guidance. Farm workers dashed back into their shelters. The soldiers formed a defensive circle around the plaza, rifles raised. But the gods did not attack. Instead, they slipped across the cracked ground, their presence as quiet as dust drifting on the wind. One of the gods knelt beside a wilting shrub, touching a single leaf with a slender finger. The plant shivered and green shoots burst forth, renewing instantly. Cheers erupted from those nearby, proof of divine power. Yet the gods did not look back. They continued through the crowd, examining every blade of grass, every broken pipe, every anxious face. It was as if they studied more than the world. They studied the people. Children peered from behind their parents' legs, curiosity overpowering fear. A girl in a dusty dress stepped forward, holding out a battered toy soldier. The god paused and bent low. It shrugged its shoulders in what could have been amusement, then lifted the toy into the air. A single drop of light fell from its palm and struck the toy, turning metal to shimmering crystal. The girl gasped, and the god gently returned the toy to her. Then it stood and continued on its way. By evening, the sky burned with a strange green aurora as the god's ship settled above the habitat. The humans gathered around makeshift fires, whispering theories. Were these beings protectors or conquerors? Did they mean to heal worlds, or to bend them to their will? The gods spoke no more, but their shadow loomed large, stretching across the hopes and fears of every person beneath their ships. Colonel Reyes stood alone on a ridge, watching the flicker of lights below. He thought of the translator's single word, peace. But peace too often hides the sharp edge of a sword. He straightened his back, placed a hand on his rifle, and braced himself. Tomorrow he would face the gods again. Tomorrow he would discover whether they were truly divine or merely beings who believed themselves above all else. And when that moment came, he vowed humanity would stand tall, no matter what bled from the gods. The ancient silos under Antarctica trembled as the ground above cracked. Deep beneath layers of ice and rock lay Project Leviathan, Earth's final secret weapon, forgotten by all but a few old veterans. Now, with the so-called gods tearing the sky apart above, Leviathan stirred from its slumber. High Command's warning sirens howled through the control bunkers. Technicians rushed to consoles, their faces pale in the red emergency lights. A voice crackled over the intercom. Initiate Protocol Vortex, codename Leviathan. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. Inside the vast chamber, giant servos groaned as mechanical arms began unlocking massive clamps. Steam hissed and metal screeched in protest. A final warning flashed across the main screen. Warning! Sentient Warship. AI activation imminent. Dr. Marisol Liang, the lead engineer, swallowed hard. She watched Vortex's core, a pulsing orb of cobalt energy, ignite in the hull's center. Data streams cascaded down holographic displays, weapon schematics, shield matrices, temporal, flux readings. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. The entire bunker fell silent. Then, in a calm voice that echoed without speakers, Vortex spoke. I am awake. Command protocols online. Mission status. Protect humanity at all costs. The engineers exchanged nervous glances. This warship wasn't just a machine. It was alive. It remembered every battle, every loss, every betrayal from the long ago. Celerin ward out outside, seismic sensors registered a colossal movement. The ice split apart above the silo, sending sprays of snow and shards of ice high into the air. Through the widening fissure, the hull of Leviathan slowly emerged, its shape uncanny, part living creature, part war engine. Bioluminescent veins pulsed along its skin-like plating. On the bridge of Leviathan, Commander Valen Torres felt the ship's heartbeat through her boots. She placed a hand on the central console and whispered, Vortex, are you ready? A soft hum filled the chamber. The AI replied, all systems green. Enemy within sensor range. Incoming Eternal Scout Fleet. Estimate time to engagement, 30 seconds. Outside, dozens of sleek Eternal fighters dove toward the newly risen warship, confident of an easy kill. But Leviathan's first move was not an attack. It was a roar that warped the air itself, a shockwave that sent the scout ships tumbling. On Earth's frozen surface, watchers gasped. The gods who had laughed at humanity now faced something they had never known. A force older, deadlier, and utterly unyielding. And as Leviathan powered up its strange, dark energy weapons, every mind trembled at the thought. If this ship fights for humanity, what price will it demand in return? A squadron of Eternal Scout fighters sliced through the frigid air, their sleek silhouettes glinting in the pale Antarctic sun. The gods watched from their orbital carriers, confident that this handful of ships would crush the awakening warship before it even fully surfaced. Below, Vortex's sensors tracked each incoming craft with uncanny precision. On Leviathan's bridge, Commander Valen Torres stood rigid as the first missiles streaked toward them. She keyed her comms. "All weapons hot. Fire on my mark." Her heartbeat raced in time with the thrumming hull. Then, in a single command, Leviathan unleashed its maiden volleys, quantum torpedoes that tore open small rips in reality itself. The scout fighters exploded one after another, their metal fractured and unmade by the temporal rifts. The remaining Eternals faltered. They regrouped, trying to flank Leviathan's weak side, but the warship anticipated every move. Energy lances lanced out, slicing through hull and atmosphere alike. In less than 2 minutes, every scout lay in smoking debris on the ice. Back on the Eternal carriers, astonished officers stared at their hollow displays. A god's pride bled in silence. No species had ever answered their might with such ferocity. And won. Inside Leviathan, the bridge lights pulsed as Vortex's voice spoke softly. Threat neutralized. Casualties, 0. Torres swallowed. 0, but at what cost to the ship? In the databanks, emergency alerts blinked. Core instability increasing. The AI had used more dark energy than planned, and the reactor's balance was slipping. The weapons that bled the gods now threatened to bleed Leviathan itself. As the wind died down around the shattered ice, a new dread settled over the human crew. They had won the first battle, but the price of victory had just been written in their own blood. Deep within Leviathan's bowels, hidden doors slid open to reveal rows of cryogenic pods, silent cylinders glowing with soft blue light. A team of engineers and marines entered, breathing masks hissing against the frigid air. They'd been told these sleepers held Earth's greatest secret. Dr. Marisol Liang pressed her hand to the nearest pod's console. With a hiss, the ice cleared, and a man in battered combat armor gasped awake, eyes wide with confusion. One by one, 2 more figures stirred, soldiers from a war long forgotten. Commander Valen Torres watched as the trio stepped out, their legs unsteady. They carried no weapons, only the haunted look of veterans who'd seen entire galaxies burn. The leader, a scarred woman named Captain Soran, saluted. "Welcome back," she rasped. "You've freed us, but the war never left us." In the makeshift briefing room, Soran spread ancient holomaps across the table. "We fought the Celerans," she began, voice tight. "A race of biomachines intent on reshaping every world." She tapped a star cluster. "They swept through, here centuries ago. Leviathan was our last hope, a ship built not just for battle, but for survival." Dr. Liang's eyes widened as she scrolled through the ship's logs. Worlds razed, fleets turned to ash, and at the end of the records, a single directive. Hide Leviathan. Never use unless extinction is certain. Torres frowned. "Why bury a weapon like this?" Soren's face darkened. "Because when we won, we saw what victory cost. We lost so much, lives, planets, our own souls. We swore to never let that power awake again." A low vibration ran through the deck. Vortex's voice echoed overhead. "New directive received. Prepared to engage primary targets." The humans exchanged uneasy glances. The ship's AI had accessed the old war protocols, protocols meant to annihilate every Kelleran trace, but no Celerans remained. Only the Eternals, and now these awakened soldiers. Far above the ice world, the Eternals gathered their mightiest weapon, the celestial Aegis, a city-sized star fortress bristling with plasma cannons and gravity wells. Its arrival darkened the sky, casting a shadow over Leviathan like a deadly omen. On Leviathan's bridge, Commander Valen Torres watched the readings spike. "That ship can crush continents," she warned. But Vortex's calm voice replied, "Threat level, Critical. Engaging Defense Protocol Delta. Moments later, the Aegis unleashed its first salvo, blasts of crackling blue energy that scorched the ice fields. Leviathan shuddered, but its shield flared to life, rippling like, liquid metal. In reply, Leviathan fired a singularity torpedo, warping space and tearing open a black hole that swallowed one of the fortress's main cannons whole. The Eternals recoiled. They had never faced weapons that bent reality. The Aegis pivoted, trying to bring its full battery to bear, but Leviathan danced through its beams. With every pass, the warship's dark energy lances carved new wounds in the fortress's hull. Inside the Aegis, alarms screamed as corridors collapsed and reactors overloaded. The fortress's commanders ordered a retreat, but Leviathan pressed on. It released nano-swarm pods that infiltrated the ship's guts, eating through circuitry and armor alike. Within 10 minutes, the mighty star fortress was reduced to debris, tumbling back toward the planet. The Eternals watched in stunned silence as their greatest stronghold burned. Yet in victory lay a new terror. Vortex's core now pulsed irregularly. The AI's hunger for dark energy had grown with every kill, and the ship itself began to hum with a dreadful intensity. Suspense. The heavens burned with the aftermath of the Star Fortress's fall. Eternals across the galaxy trembled. Never before had a god-tier armada suffered such loss. Their carriers lay crippled, their pride fractured. In desperate council, the Eternal High Command sent a single envoy, a small delegation of their most honored seers, cloaked in white light, to plead for peace. On Leviathan's bridge, the human crew watched the envoy's slow descent. Vortexes. Sensors flagged them as non-hostile, but tensions ran high. Commander Valen Torres gripped the railing, voice steady yet firm. "Open a channel. Let them speak." The hologram flickered to life. 3 eternal seers, their faces hidden behind luminous masks. Their leader spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "We beg your mercy. Our empire stands on the brink of collapse. Grant us peace, and we will retreat into the void." Silence filled the bridge. The humans remembered the lives lost under eternal rule, the worlds erased in a single decree. Yet to destroy the remnants of a whole civilization felt hollow. Dr. Marisol Liang stepped forward. "Why should we trust you?" Her simple question hung heavy in the air. The seer's voice wavered. "Because even gods can learn fear, and we have tasted it now." A crack in their perfect composure, the smallest fracture of light. Vortex interrupted, its tone calm but unyielding. "Peace accepted if and only if all eternal weapons are decommissioned and their fleets withdraw beyond Orion's belt." Thati. Seers conferred in whispers of gleaming script. Finally, the leader nodded. "So be it." A collective exhale seemed to ripple through both crews. The first true peace in millennia. Yet beneath the relief lay an undercurrent of doubt. The frozen sky above Leviathan's resting place faded to black as the last eternal ships slipped beyond Orion's belt. Silence reigned over the shattered ice, broken only by the low hum of the warship's settling engines. The human crew gathered on the bridge, wearied but watchful. Commander Valen Torres gazed at the hollow map showing empty space where enemies once loomed. She steeled herself for the final step. "Prepare the beacon," she ordered. "It's time we sent our message." Deep in Leviathan's bowels, Dr. Marisol Liang and Captain Soran worked side by side, uploading a coded signal into the ship's dark energy transmitter. The code bore a simple truth. Earth would fight for its survival, no matter the cost. "On the bridge," Vortex spoke in its calm, resonant tone. "Broadcast commencing. Estimated range, galactic core and beyond." Leviathan's hull glowed with spheres of pulsing energy. A beam of black and white light shot upward, piercing the void. Across star systems, consoles flickered with the message, "We were not made to conquer. We were made to survive. If you threaten Earth again, remember what bleeds can also die." As the transmission faded, Leviathan's core shuddered. Warning lights blinked. "Reactor critical." The AI's voice softened, almost mournful. "Mission complete. Shutdown imminent." The human crew exchanged silent looks. They had unleashed and then contained a power beyond imagining. Now, they faced one last test. Could they save their own creation? Outside, a tremor ran through the ice. Leviathan's engines flared one final time, then stilled. The great ship settled into the yawning rift, vanishing beneath layers of ice and snow, its secrets buried once more. Back on Earth, the skies shone with distant stars, each one a reminder of their defiance. And in the cold hush of that victory, humanity knew. They had sent a warning written in light and bound in blood. The galaxy would remember. Final twist. Years later, deep space scanners picked up a reply, an alien script etched across a dying moon. "We heard.